You've eaten this your entire life. But the version you know, the cone, the scoop, the soft serve, is the last chapter of a story that started over 2,000 years ago. Emperors, snow runners, spice traders, a trade route most people have never heard of. By the end of this, ice cream is never going to taste the same to you. The first version of what we'd call ice cream shows up in Tang Dynasty China. Around 600 AD, Emperor Taizong had a thing for a chilled buffalo milk mixture that was thickened, flavored, and packed in ice. And the ice didn't just appear. He had runners, actual people whose entire job was hauling ice down from the mountains and getting it to the palace before it melted. This wasn't dessert for everyone. This was power food. A way for the emperor to signal that he could command nature itself. Cold in summer, luxury in any form he wanted. The recipe was so closely guarded that when Taizong died, it nearly disappeared entirely. Meanwhile, in the Arab world, physicians and scholars had been doing something similar, but for medicinal reasons. They'd been mixing fruit syrups with snow and ice since at least the 9th century. They called them sharbat, which is exactly where the word sherbet comes from. These weren't just treats. Arab physicians prescribed them for fever, for inflammation, for heat exhaustion. Cold was medicine. And when Arab traders moved those recipes along the spice routes into Persia and across the Mediterranean, the idea of chilled, sweetened mixtures started spreading, slowly, quietly. West, Italy is where it starts to look like something you'd actually recognize. By the 16th century, the Medici family, yes, those Medicis, had imported the idea of frozen desserts into Florentine court culture. There's a story that when Catherine de' Medici married the future King of France in 1533, she brought her personal chefs with her to Paris, and those chefs brought frozen dessert recipes. Historians debate how literally true that is. But what's not debated is that by the mid-1600s, frozen desserts called sorbetti had exploded across Italian courts and were making their way through European nobility. These were still iced fruit mixtures. Still basically sharbat with an Italian accent. The leap to actual ice cream, dairy, cream, churned, that comes next. Real quick, think about the last time you had ice cream. A cone maybe, or straight from the carton at midnight. Whatever it was, you had zero idea you were eating the end result of 2,000 years of empire-level obsession. That's kind of insane. By the late 1600s, French chefs had figured out the dairy version. The key discovery was that if you packed a mixture of cream, sugar, and flavoring in a container surrounded by ice and salt and kept stirring it, you got something that froze smooth instead of solid. Creamy, scoopable. The French called it crème glacée, frozen cream. Louis XIV, the Sun King, was reportedly obsessed with it. It appeared at Versailles banquets as a luxury showpiece, a dessert that said, "We have enough ice, enough cream, enough servants, and enough power to make cold food in summer." For most of the 1600s, the recipe was kept strictly within the walls of the French court. If you weren't nobility, you weren't eating it. Okay, so far, ice cream has been owned by Chinese emperors, Arab physicians, Italian nobility, and French kings. Regular people have been completely locked out this entire time. Drop a comment right now. Which empire do you think deserves the most credit for inventing ice cream? Because we're about to get to the part where it finally escapes the palace walls. And the answer might surprise you. Ice cream escapes the palace in the early 1700s. And the escape route is Paris. A Sicilian cafe owner named Francesco Procopio dei Coltelli had already opened a cafe in Paris in 1686 called Café de Procope. He started selling frozen desserts and sorbets and early ice creams to anyone who walked in off the street. Not just nobles, anyone. It exploded. Within decades, cafe owners across Paris were selling what they called glacés, and ice cream had become something you could buy on a city street for the first time in its 2,000-year history. Voltaire was apparently a regular. Benjamin Franklin tried it in Paris. Thomas Jefferson brought a recipe back to Virginia. Ice cream had entered the world. America ran with it. By the 1800s, insulated ice houses, commercial ice harvesting from frozen lakes, and the invention of the hand-cranked ice cream freezer in 1843 meant that ice cream could be made faster, cheaper, and at scale. Street vendors, many of them immigrants from Italy and Germany, started selling penny licks on city corners. A glass of ice cream for a penny. Then the waffle cone showed up at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, possibly the most important accident in ice cream history. An ice cream vendor ran out of dishes. A nearby waffle vendor rolled his waffles into cones. Done. The modern ice cream experience, the cone, the scoop, the summer ritual, was born in that moment. Soft serve comes out of World War II rationing. When milk solids were scarce, manufacturers found that pumping more air into the mix stretched it further. They accidentally made it lighter. Better, some would say. The Mr. Softy truck, Dairy Queen, the Dairy Bar, the whole American soft serve infrastructure. It was built on a wartime shortage that nobody planned. And somewhere in there, a young Margaret Thatcher, yes, that Margaret Thatcher, was part of a team of chemists working for a food company that helped develop techniques for increasing air content in ice cream. The future Prime Minister of Britain helped make soft serve possible. You really cannot make this stuff up. So here's where we land. Ice cream started as a privilege of emperors, something you had runners and mountain ice and palace chefs for. It moved through Persian physicians, Italian courts, French cafes, immigrant street vendors, and wartime food labs. And now it's a $100 billion global industry. You can get a pint of it at 2 a.m. from a gas station. That journey, from Tang Dynasty emperor to midnight gas station run, is one of the most democratic stories in food history. 2,000 years. Emperors and chemists and immigrant street vendors, and one very unexpected future prime minister, all of it so you could eat ice cream at midnight without thinking twice about it. If you learned something today that genuinely surprised you, hit like. It means a lot, and it tells us to keep making these. Subscribe if you want the story behind everything else you eat without thinking about. And if you want to go even deeper, the video on the right is exactly the kind of thing you're already into.